Hey everybody, I'm Dan Lapel for New Focus Recordings, and I'm happy to be joined by Young Hong, a wonderful soprano and longtime collaborator with Michael Hersch, a composer who's put out several albums with New Focus, including the recent "The Script of Storms," which the cover is behind me, which features two works that Ah Young sings, one with Ensemble Klang, the Dutch-based ensemble, and the other the BBC Symphony Orchestra. How's it going, Ah Young?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for hopping on Zoom.
Thank
So
you
it'd be
so much
great
for.
to get your perspective as vocal soloist on these pieces. I think usually we do these Zooms and it's often with the composer, but I actually am really happy Michael suggested this. It's sort of a different look, and you have such a sort of deep trajectory with Michael's music in general that I think you can really shine an interesting light on these particular pieces. So
Thank
thanks
you
for
so much for having me. And any opportunity I have talking about Michael Hersch's music is such an honor, and I absolutely consider that time to be very, very special. And it doesn't come often because usually they want to talk with the composer. So
sure.
when they want to talk with the performer, it's really exciting because then I can really go to town with on
Yeah.
how awesome the music is, because usually the composer doesn't talk about his music in that way. They talk about it a little bit more uh, distancing
Right.
themselves
Yeah.
just
Right.
a little bit, right?
More
And they're not
detachment, maybe. Yeah.
right.
Right. That's
Absolutely.
great. You can be a real advocate and cheerleader for this. Yeah.
Usually, yes,
Right. Right. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So how? Give us some background on how long you've been working with Michael. I mean, I know that even the stuff on New Focus, you're on several recordings and also several projects that were on different labels, and it's just a really great body of work that you guys have sort of assembled together.
Absolutely. And, the funny thing is that we went to Peabody Conservatory. Our years there overlapped. He didn't know anything about me. Why would he? But I knew about him. I heard that he was this amazing composer. And but then I was too naive and I didn't know anything about new music, and I just went, okay, that's nice, and then moved on. And then we went our separate ways. He did his own thing and I did my own thing. And then years later, we started teaching at Peabody as faculty. Um, and even then, we didn't know each other that well. I didn't know anything about his music. And so in 2012, someone had mentioned he was looking for a soprano for his opera, or one person opera, On the Threshold of Winter.
Hmm.
And he was going through an extensive search, and um, just not finding quite the right voice for the work. He auditioned beautiful singers. I mean, wonderfully talented and artistic, but just not the tone that he had in mind, I guess. And when I sent him some materials, he said, "Oh." And I sent the absolutely the wrong materials.
Uh,
New music composer. I had no idea what kind of music he composed,
yeah.
and I sent a lot of strange things that were much more of the standard repertoire.
Uh-huh.
So, to make a long story short, he liked my voice, and he said, "Let's work together." And so, On the Threshold of Winter was my first piece that I premiered for him in
Yeah.
2014.
Wonderful.
So since then, we've had so many
Yeah.
works that I can't even count.
Right.
So
Well,
it's
one that stands out for me is I think the companion piece to On the Threshold of Winter. I hope we get a chance to visit soon. Isn't there
yes,
some relationship between those two pieces?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that one was premiered at Ojai. It was also taken over to San Francisco, and as well as Albra festival. So
Hmm.
we really had a wonderful opportunity, and it was all under the umbrella of the Ojai festivals.
Cool.
Um, but we had a really a wonderful opportunity to share that really difficult piece,
Yeah.
and it's also a very unusual piece because it has another singer on
Yeah.
the work, right,
Right.
with Kira Duffy.
Kira Duffy. Right.
Right,
And
absolutely, and
that
she's
that
fantastic.
came out on in our catalog in 2020. Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I know you've done some really amazing things with, and it's beautiful CD. Oh my gosh, it's so
It
beautiful.
is very powerful CD, and it was also particularly poignant because it came out in May 2020,
Mm,
and for those folks who don't know the piece, it sets letters between Michael Hersch and a friend of his while they both had cancer,
right.
right? And this was like in the midst of like the most intense part of the pandemic for at least here in New York. And I remember sort of like listening, spending time with this piece, and thinking. I mean, it was sort of it was intense, as is most of Michael's music to begin with.
It
But
isn't,
the
yes.
context even intensified the intensity. So
Absolutely. And I felt that it was such a, I don't know, it was a huge responsibility. I mean, every piece that I premiere for Michael is a huge responsibility, but this one in particular, I wasn't quite sure how to personify someone that was very dear to him,
sure, yeah,
and I was so scared that I was going to not have the right tone or not have the right inflection, not have the
yeah,
right emotion. And I mean, I was a basket case. I just kept saying, "I don't think I know this. I don't know how to do this."
right, right,
And but
right,
he was just be yourself. You're fine. You're fine. I wrote this for your voice, so just it's fine.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
he was
yeah,
very calm and as always, very encouraging and very trusting, which is an amazing feeling to have someone
sure,
say, "I trust you with this, and so go ahead and don't worry too much about it." You know?
yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, so much of Michael's music is uh, is extremely intense. It's sort of the density of uh, powerful expression, almost sort of difficult, often almost painful expression, is like it's so dense with that. And I wonder, especially in these longer pieces, I mean, it must be a sort of almost emotional endurance test for you as a performer, not to
Mm,
mention the technical demands, but to sort of be
mm.
in that space in a very like authentic way and be delivering these very powerful texts. Uh,
Yes,
how does it feel?
absolutely. I mean, the stamina on so many different levels. The stamina has to be. I mean, it has to be constant, and I don't want to say. Yeah, I think constant, and it's as if um, I'm just I have a journey to take and I have to just
Sure.
keep the path. And it's interesting if I have to think about uh, having to go into that space, that sonic world, and the kind of energy and the focus that is required for his piece. If I have to think about it right before, it is a little bit unnerving and it is a bit
Yeah.
overwhelming and
Sure.
here we go and then
Right.
but
Try not to
then
think about it. Yeah.
absolutely, but then once the music starts, it's really one of the most fascinating things that overcomes me. I can tell you this has happened over and over and over. I remember having to do On the Threshold of Winter, and once it was a September, and I can't remember exactly what date year it was, but I remember that the beginning of the month I had On the Threshold of Winter in Baltimore. Middle of the month, the same month, I had to go to Philadelphia to do Mozart's Grand Mass in C minor. And then at the end of the month, I had to fly to Nashville to do On the Threshold of Winter.
Wow.
The Mozart, I thought, oh, well, it'll be fun because, I can do
Right.
that, no problem. It just completely ripped me away from On the
Yeah.
Threshold.
Wow. Yeah.
And I did the Mozart, and then I came back thinking, I don't know anything. I don't know how to do anything anymore.
Right.
And then once the music started, it just snapped back. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just one of the most surreal
Yeah.
feelings I've ever had. But that's how I feel. I don't know how others feel, but I believe that it's similar because of the different writings I've read, describing his work. But it is one that really puts you in this world that is it's too much to bear. And I have my own opinion about why it's so difficult to enter this sonic world. And I've said this for a very long time. I remember, I believe I sent him an email asking, how do you know what I feel?
Ah,
And
right.
whatever music, and it's not even the music that he's writing for my voice, it could be a string quartet, it could be a symphony, it could be a large piano works, it could be a violin concerto. It feels as if he knows some of the real tragic and difficult times of my life,
Hmm.
and he just put a little light on it.
Right.
And I said, these are the feelings, and these are the fears, these are the the things that we want to put away and hide, and not think about it because it's too difficult to think about the truth about ourselves. And what he does is pull that out, and I
Sure.
get to think about all the things in my past or present, or even possibly the future concerns I have of this world, of my family, of my friends, of just humanity in general.
Mhm.
How do you know what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
How do
Right.
you know
No.
what I'm feeling? And it's so that's I think that's why it's so difficult. It makes
Yeah.
um a listener address these difficult questions,
Yeah.
difficult situations,
A word
and
that I feel like I see coming up a lot with Michael's music is unflinching. So
yes,
he sort of like faces these very difficult subject matters, but also this very intense music, this very sort of sometimes painful, uncomfortable music,
yes, yes,
and with a total unflinching sort of stance. But the
yeah,
marriage between the sort of the compositional material, the text setting, and the text itself, and the sort of dramatic context is so seamless that it hits in an extremely effective and powerful way. So, and
I
that's
agree.
also absolutely testament to your performances on this album. Maybe we should listen to a little bit of one of those movements. How about movement two from Cortex and Ankle? So this is
Yeah.
the smaller ensemble piece with the Dutch-based group Ensemble Klang, which is a really wonderful group, including guitar and saxophone, um, and Cortex and Ankle is setting texts by the English poet Christopher Middleton, who Michael has used as the source for several other pieces too. So
Excellent.
let's listen to a bit of the second movement, and then maybe you can talk us through it a little after we've heard it.
About to
Beautiful. Well, do you want to sort of talk us through what we just heard, but also maybe in the context of that whole movement?
Yes. So this is a very it's a it's a typical Michael Hersch movement where you have you're basically hearing the extreme ends of the voice, the gentleness of as far as dynamics is concerned, and also the register of the voice. Uh, I find this to be so uh, it's humbling because you have to go back and say, all right, what you thought you knew about technique, let's just
Mm.
go back and iron things out a little bit more because
Yeah, I imagine that's something that comes up quite a bit in his
it's
vocal writing.
extreme. So I have to, there's no cheating. I can't just, make that phrase really beautiful because if I do that, it'll sound terrible. I have to be super honest with my tone and simplify and really get to the text.
Mm.
And the text is unusually uh, wonderful to sing, and I'm not quite sure. I haven't figured it out. Maybe it's because Michael has had such a great relationship with the late Christopher Middleton,
Oh yeah.
as well as Fozzie Karim. I mean, they were very close, and so perhaps he feels that the words just coexist in his brain with his music, so that that it's just an effortless way of setting their text, and so that ease of folding the words into his music, I can also feel that in some. I can't even describe it technically, but it feels absolutely natural. And I love singing Middleton's text. I love singing Fozzie Karim's text. It's as if, and I knew Fozzie, but I didn't know Middleton. I did sing in his memorial concert. Um, but I feel like I've known both of them, very well, equally. So the text in themselves they just roll off the tongue for me.
Mm.
For me,
Hmm.
someone else might feel differently, but going back to technical difficulty is the vocal technique is extreme here because you have this gentle low on the lower part of the staff. It's sandwiched that way, whereas the beginning and the end is super gentle, as if nothing happened, no chaos has occurred. But in the middle is this, burst of, fortissimo and large octave leaps, going higher and higher to the D flat, D natural, and these are some extended range notes for me. And so, and you have these bursts, but then you come back to this really beautiful. I mean, as if nothing happened.
Mm.
A couple measures ago, there was a high D flat that I had to scream out. And then, but you have to, in a live concert, you have to just readjust and go back to something as if nothing happened. The voice is
Wow.
absolutely pure. It's always requested of Hersch's music is that the voice is pure, very simple, very transparent,
Mm.
and I think that's probably the most wonderful challenge for me as a singer and someone who teaches vocal technique is that you better not spend everything on those high notes because you're going to have to sing something really quiet and gentle and meaningful in
Yeah.
at the end. So
So when
this
you
is
say pure, you're referring to the amount of vibrato or
in
just
all. Yes, well,
the
yeah, that
quality of the
would
tone
be
itself?
right. The lower end of the lower range of his repertoire generally asks of non vibrato, but at the same time I think that I have gotten away with a little bit of vibrato in his music here and there, but it
Sure.
has to
Yeah.
just be clean. Pitch is spot on. There's no
Yeah. Of
scooping.
course.
There's
Right.
no
Right. Right.
nothing romantic about it.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Right. Right.
right. And
Especially, I mean, these passages that have sort of quarter tone stuff happening in the ensemble, and you're navigating some of that. Like it seems like in order for the intricacy of the pitch to register with the listener, everything needs to be like, like
razor sharp.
yeah, like a laser on the initial attack. And are you? I'm curious, just because that always sounds to me when I hear a vocalist performing in a pitch context like that it would be very challenging. Are you mostly grabbing your pitches from the sort of relative pitch of your line, or are you ever listening for, oh, I know that like the clarinet has like a F quarter sharp here, but I guess
Yes.
that can be sort of unreliable. You have to assume that the clarinet's F quarter sharp is going to be really in tune.
Right,
So,
right. Well, I think there
you
were
seem an orchestra, so of course it would be.
right.
You
The cortex, there was no clarinet, so I had
Right,
to
right, yes, yeah, yeah, saxophone or whatever. Yeah,
saxophone. Yes.
yeah,
No, there are clues everywhere. Sometimes it was from my own last pitch, and then
yeah, right,
sometimes
right,
it's from there's something somewhere, but it's not the note that I'm supposed to sing. It's
right.
usually I
Maybe
have to
a
go,
third
okay,
away or something. Yeah.
gotta do that tritone from there,
Right,
or
right, right, right. Yeah.
so yeah, it's not. It's there are times I will say that there are a handful of times where I go, wow, I'm just going to have to memorize
Right.
something,
Sort of like
some kind of pitch,
the physical
right,
memory of where it was in
right.
the voice.
And
Yeah.
I don't have perfect pitch, so
No.
um, sometimes I'm singing and I'm thinking, gosh, I hope this is right. I hope, and then and I have that muscle memory
Yeah,
that
of
it
course.
feels right. So it's and also, sometimes it makes sense. And now that if I make a mistake, it sounds too normal, so I know
Right.
that it's wrong.
Yeah.
But
And you sort of absorb how it fits into the overall
absolutely
vocal harmony.
right.
So yeah.
But there is I remember in the beginning when I was getting to know his um, writing style, it almost felt as if he was just trying to throw me off with some of these half steps off, and
Yeah.
but
Definitely, it's very challenging pitch
I
wise.
think I gravitate towards this kind of writing because I really enjoy Kurtak's music. It's the same
Me
kind of
too.
thing,
Yeah, yeah,
and Georg Friedrich Haas's music is just
yeah.
like really enjoying that beautiful cluster and
Yeah, these clashes
yes,
and
absolutely,
it's very
yeah,
consistent with the sort of emotional tone of a lot
I
of
think
Michael's
so.
music, which is like, you know,
Right. There's something
knife to the heart a little bit.
absolutely, yeah. Or it could be that kind of knife to the heart, or it could be that there is a grain of sand somewhere in my eyeball.
Oh
That
yeah,
it's just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes, it's wonderful, absolutely
Yeah.
wonderful. But I think I must gravitate towards things like that. But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. Well,
yeah. So this
well,
this movement really is it's just it's challenging in a technical way, but emotionally it's having to navigate through this very simple unsentimental delivery of the
oh,
text,
interesting.
the sort of the honest delivery of the text, and then feeling the burst of energy um, and the technical, the leaps in the voice, and then going back to the same gentle delivery again.
It's almost like he's establishing like an expressive dialogue within the vocal part itself. Like this,
yeah,
you have a duet with yourself in terms of sort of expressive
yes,
range. Yeah.
and I think it is. I mean, I have to admit that all human beings have that
Sure, of
that
course.
back and
Toggle back
forth.
and forth between that. Yeah.
Right, absolutely,
Should we listen to one other excerpt from Cortex and Ankle,
absolutely.
Movement 8, the opening of Movement 8 here. you want to give us some backstory, insight into that passage?
Yes, I think, in my opinion, and I hope he agrees, Michael agrees, this is one of the most, uh, one of my favorite things to do is to be with an ensemble that is so tight and their sounds are so beautifully blended. You know, being the alto sax they are, and the trombone that they are, and the electric guitar. They're such unusual instruments, and you would think that they're so invasive and so powerful and kind of plow through. It's one of the most gentle movements, and the vocal writing and the brass writing. You sometimes it feels as if the sounds are almost the same, and they are clustered tones, and just playing with all of these very, very tight intervals. And it's one of my favorite things to do is to be able to uh, exist in that kind of tone. What As far as whoever the ensemble is, if it's a clarinet or if it's an oboe or if it's alto sax and trombone, that we are able to coexist, and it's the most harmonious and the most natural combination of instruments, even though it's so unnatural. What I think is like, would you like to sing with two saxophones and trombone and a plethora of percussion and electric? I would say no, not really. I
Right.
mean, my go-to would be your standard. I'd like to do it with the strings and the
Yeah.
piano.
Right.
But
Right.
this was one of the most beautiful. I mean, this entire experience working with Ensemble Clang was absolutely,
Yeah, it's a great group.
oh
Really
my
wonderful.
gosh,
Wow.
they are so fantastic. And
Wow.
I had so much respect for them. I have so much respect for them, and I learned so much working with them because they're so good at what they do, and I became a better musician working with them. So but this particular movement is by far, I mean, no, there's so many movies. They're all equally wonderful in different ways, but I was able to blend my sound with them and felt like I was part of the ensemble, not just a soloist with an ensemble. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's that's very cool to sort of have the voice go back and forth between these different roles and sort of become one of the instruments in terms of a timbral mix, and then sort of reassert itself as a solo role. And
So
very cool.
fantastic writing.
Yeah.
I can't, it's absolutely genius. And I'm so glad Michael's not here so I can say all sorts of things like
Right, right. We won't
that.
stop you. Well, on that note, I think you know, sort of writ large, the same thing happens in the Script of Storms, the title piece, which is with the BBC Symphony Orchestra. But then we really hear Michael's canvas expanded to the large sort of orchestration. Uh, should we maybe check out the beginning of Movement 4?
Yes.
Here we go. So this is Movement 4 from the Script of Storms, and we're hearing the BBC Symphony Orchestra, Young Hong, of course, on soprano, and Tito Munoz is conducting.
Who avoid coming close, we would advise you to tremble. Although you see in our cities ruins and skeletons, we are not victims of some past epidemic. Nor were we ever fodder for lost wars.
Okay, so we have this very powerfully delivered spoken text at this point. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes. And I've The Christopher Middleton text in Cortex and Ankle, there's a movement where I also I speak the text in a certain rhythm, and then I very ambiguously go to middle C because I have a little bit of a duet with the trombone, and so here there's no pitch
Right.
to sort of hover around. It's just me delivering the text however I want, but not really exactly however I want, because all the words are very carefully put into a certain specific rhythm
Yeah.
in each bar. So many people have asked me, your delivery of, the text in Michael Hersch's pieces are so powerful. What do you think about? How do you think of it dramatically? How do you think of it? All of these very complicated questions of how I'm delivering the text. And honestly, I'm just doing what Michael Hersch wrote.
Right.
And it's as and he and I have mentioned, we've talked about it before. We seem to have very similar ideas of how things should be spoken, how things should be, what aesthetically we seem to see eye to eye on a lot of similar things, and we agree on a lot of things aesthetically. So I guess that's why we work well together. But the text is, not only is it Fawzi Karim's text that I can hear his voice when I speak the text. I don't really hear my voice. I hear his voice. I hear Michael's voice. It's a sort of an uncanny, intertwining of two people I admire so much and I care about so much. And the text flows out the way it's supposed to flow out. I really had nothing to do with it. I know it came from my mouth and I put tone behind it, but it's really, it's them. It's purely them. And that's why it's so powerful. It's not because of, and Michael will disagree and say it's my delivery, but no, I trust composers and the text, the poets, 100% when I am going to do a certain piece. And I must connect with them. So I 100% trust them, and I will deliver exactly the way the score says I should deliver it. So
Yeah. And for those folks not familiar with Fawzi Karim, he was an Iraqi poet and writer. I think a painter as well, right?
absolutely. And so the painting behind you, that's Fawzi's. Yes,
oh,
absolutely.
great.
And it's supposed to be him, I think, in the water. Right.
And a close collaborator also of Michael Hersch's, and sort of someone who experienced this long trajectory of turmoil in Iraq, and I think that shows up a lot in his work.
Absolutely, and his relocation to a different country, having to acclimate himself in a country that's very, very different from his, and in the fact that we were able to premiere the piece in his new home. He lived in London for a very long time, but at the same time, it is, different from where he came from.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But the fact that it was this country that embraced him and that we were able to premiere his piece.
Well,
unfortunately, after he passed away, he knew that it was going to happen, but he didn't know it was going to be. It was going to be with BBC, but. Yeah, so it's a sad story, but it's also a wonderful story. And I met Fawzi Karim at Christopher Middleton's memorial concert.
Oh, wow.
And I was singing a smaller version of Cortex and Ankle.
Interesting.
And that's how I met Fawzi.
So there's another layer of connection.
There's so many connections. This this album has so many different connections.
Yeah. Oh, that's
right.
Great.
But his Fawzi's words are just so rich. There's so many, and so I like both Middleton and Karim, the words are incredibly potent. They're every word. There's no room for extra words. It's just the words that he needed, and they they remind me of Michael's music. There's no extra notes that he just put in there to connect whatever section to another section. Every note is needed. One note missing sounds weird, and there's no nothing extra in there.
So a really sort of meaningful series of connections with you meeting Fozzy at Christopher Middleton's funeral, or memorial service, sorry.
Memorial concert, yes, yes.
And then also the BBC premiering his piece after he passed, but in his adopted country,
Absolutely.
participating in that performance too. And
Right.
the through line here of meaningful collaborations between several people with Michael, and I think it lends even more power to this collection.
Right.
Really.
And uh, I think all three of them are very similar in the fact that their words and their music, they're so potent, and it's there's this no words, no notes, no note wasted.
Yeah, right.
Everything is just where it's supposed to be, and so there's an enormous care with every note, and enormous care with every word that I get to sing
Yeah.
in this album. It was just an honor, absolutely an honor.
Yeah, no, that's
Wow.
it's fantastic. You mentioned Kortag, who I think of as a master of economy, uh, and while Michael's music tends to be more expansive temporally than Kortag's, I feel like there's a similar sense of sort of like the choices made are the only choices that could have been made for that particular moment in the text or that particular moment in the music, and there's a
Absolutely.
real high level of specificity in the intent of his compositional choices, you know.
Absolutely. And because I'm currently working on Kafka fragments,
Ah,
uh
great.
the sort of the poignancy of the maybe the two system song.
Yeah, yeah,
How
yeah.
many bars is that?
Those are such
It's
great
just
pieces. Yeah.
really, really precise and efficient. I think that the shortness and the poignant expressive expression in Kortak's um, fragments are that the I'm having a hard time describing it, even though he took only really literally half a page to write his music.
Mm.
It's so precise, and I mean that the shortness of it is also something that is absolutely moving to me, and and then in the extreme end of things, for Michael, the length of his pieces. And I in the beginning, because I was still trying to figure out, I just knew the music was so powerful, and I connected with it, and I wasn't sure how I was connecting with it, and was really doing my best. I've listened to pretty much everything that he's written, and I've always wondered, what is it about the length of some of these. They're extraordinary. They're like uh, pilgrimage through vast countries, or that kind of that epic for one piece. And the I've noticed that it is the length, it is the stamina of also the audience members, the listener, having to go through that journey. You can't just take one movement of the Vanishing Pavilions and go, wow, that was really amazing.
Right.
Yes, you can take them out and really appreciate the composition of it, but it is the journey from book one
Sure.
to all the way to the end. And when you go through the whole thing, there's this. If I mean, for me, it's like my brain just goes,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and your
It's part
body's
of, yeah,
exhausted.
yeah. Right.
Yes, and your brain is exhausted. Everything is exhausted, but it's in this because of the length of it, that is so profound to me.
Sure. Sure.
So but all of these writers and the music of Michael, there's something about every single second, every single moment that is so valuable.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that he does take some time. Like there's movements that really express the words, but it's also expressed in the way he hears it as well. The way he notates everything. So
Yeah. Well, let's listen to one other excerpt from the Script of Storms. This is from the fifth movement, and we're gonna fade in around 2 minutes. So here it is. Great. So maybe give us some of your perspective on this particular excerpt.
absolutely. I wish we could talk about every movement in
Of
length, in
course.
great length,
Yeah, yeah.
because there's so many wonderful moments there. Every part of it. Oh, if you say, okay, well, we're going to talk about number 3, and I'll go, oh my gosh,
Right.
So every movement is so special. I do remember particularly the text in this one, and it's really interesting because the text is. I'll just give you the entire text of number 5. On the river's bank, there's a death squad, 10 strong. 10 they have killed, and someone is weeping there. I know the water only by the reflection of each star. So the juxtaposition of something so horrifying, a death squad, and the people that they have killed, and then the end of that stanza is, I know the water only by the reflection of each star. I mean, it's so intense, it's so beautiful, even though you have this horrifying image, but then it's ended by the most beautiful sentence, and
Yeah.
the way Michael treats that particular sentence. It's this mezzo piano floating on an E flat, D flat, E flat, G, F sharp. It just hovers around that area. And for the soprano, it's usually identified as somewhere around the passaggio, where it's kind of a fragile transition from the middle voice to the higher voice. But I hear it as one of, I think Michael may, of course, 100%, he knows my voice well enough that the clarity that comes from that passageway is how he wanted to set this sentence. And so you have this beautiful text and the clarity of the notes, and how it hovers there in this gorgeous, sustained way. I mean, it's just in absolute respect to the beauty of the text, as well as his knowledge of my voice and where what it can do, where it is the
Sure.
most clear in that
Yeah.
range. So
What you're describing seems to me to be such a great encapsulation of one of the things that makes Michael's music so powerful, which is that he explores these very difficult contexts, whether it be illness or some kind of horrific event, or in the instance of now I'm blanking on the name of the record about the mental asylum. Uh,
oh, images from
yes, from a
a
closed
closed
ward, right?
ward. Sorry.
You know, obviously, this is he is interested in frames that put us into uncomfortable spaces. But within those uncomfortable spaces, he finds these moments of incredible beauty. I think the juxtaposition is very cathartic, at least for the listener, and I imagine for the performers too.
Yeah.
And it really makes his work stand out. I mean, nothing is easily gained in Michael Hersch's music, but it feels that it's always earned. And I think that is, you know, it makes it, despite the fact that it's not easy, it makes us want to sort of be part of the experience of these pieces. So
I think
uh,
his music is a really an accurate reflection of his life. His life is full of a lot of tragedies and a lot of
yeah,
pain,
yeah,
and but yet, you know, his personality is that he finds the smallest kernel of hope and something positive that he can hold on to. So
right, yeah. Well, this was such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to speak about your role in singing these beautiful pieces, and your collaboration with Michael in general. And the album is The Script of Storms. It came out on September 16th, 2022, FCR344. Let me just run through some credits of some important folks who were involved with this production. It was, the Cortex and Ankle recording was recorded by Arne Bach. I'm not going to attempt to say the name of the venue. It looks extremely difficult to pronounce, but it was mixed and produced by Arne Bach and Pete Hardin, who is the guitarist and director of Ensemble Klang. And the title track, "Script of Storms," was recorded by the BBC recording engineer Pete Smith, with assistance from Chris Rouse and Anne McKay. And Ryan Strieber edited and mixed it, Octavian Audio. And the art was done by our own Mark Wolf. And as you mentioned, the image behind me was painted by Fauzi Karim, who also wrote the text for The Script of Storms, and Christopher Middleton's texts were used in Cortex and Ankle. I mentioned Tito Munoz, I think, conducted the BBC Symphony. And Young, thanks again for joining. Congratulations, and want to encourage everybody to spend some time with this album and the
thank
rest of
you
Michael's
so
music.
much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Okay, take care, everybody. Bye bye.